A little over a year ago, I was privileged to attend an award ceremony honoring Patrick King Goggins. I sat and heard people stand to talk about his rags to riches life story, about his many business successes and accomplishments, or about his life of deep faith, or his life as a husband, a father, his commitment and love for his country. All of those things that were shared that evening are true, and really so much more. However, I would like to share the story from a little different perspective. Yes, the rags to riches, but also the so much more. I would like to share a few of the things that he has taught me over my short life that I will use for the rest of my life, the lessons I've learned from my grandpa, Patrick King Goggins. Grandpa was born on May 28, 1930. The sixth child and the sixth son to the parents of John and Pearl Goggins.
I was born in Orland, California. My father was a sharecropper, so they still owned the place, but so they would rent it out to someone that had some built-in labor. And my father had there was 6 kids, and those 6 were all boys.
John Goggins, his wife and 6 sons, returned to Montana to search for better opportunities. Grandpa recalls, "We were all loaded up and driving across the country. I looked back just in time to see my favorite blanket blow off the top of the car and float down to the water. I put up quite a racket, but Dad said, 'We're a-going north.' And he just kept right on a-going."
We milked cows by hand. My dad milked by hand, and Mom did. Mom was a really fast milker, and then all the brothers, all of them milked by those cows and did it by hand. And so that cream check was not very big, but in 1929, on a Friday, Dad took the cream into the creamery, and he got 57 cents a pound, 57 cents for it a pound. And then that break of that's what they call the crash of 29 over the weekend. And when he took the cream in Monday to the creamery, he only got 16 cents for it. So he didn't have much to live on.
Throughout high school, Grandpa was interested in just about everything. He played baseball, basketball, football, and sang in the choir. In the time of 1951, Grandpa met the love of his life, Babe Becker.
And his brother was teaching there, and he called me up and asked me for a date. And he wanted to know if there was another teacher that could go with his brother, Pat. And I got Betty Lou, who was the home ec teacher there. And they came and picked me up first. And we got to Betty Lou's house, and Pat said, "Well, you got to go get her, Ralph. I wouldn't know her if she came to the door." Well, Pat had a 2-door car, so we were all 3 in the front seat. So Ralph went in to get Betty Lou, and I just sat there. Well, Betty Lou came out and pulled up the back seat, got in the back seat, and I ended up with Grandpa. He was working as a herdsman up at the jumping horse ranch and decided he'd go back to school. And of course we got married, so he was going to college and I was teaching school. And then he went to work up at in Vaughan, Montana, to help with a sale up there. And then he went to Colorado Springs after that, after he graduated, and worked for L. Atchison. And then he started with the Stockman. And he sold so much advertising that they couldn't print it all, so he got hired by the Western Livestock Journal, and he sold for them for a couple of years, and then he went to work for Norm Warsinski for the Western Livestock Reporter, and Norm wanted to get out of the business, so he sold it to Grandpa. Art Boswell came to him and he said, "Well, if you're going to buy that, why don't you buy my ranch, the Vermilion Ranch. So he offered Grandpa the ranch at a price that, and the bank went along with us. And from there, it's just history. He just kept going up and adding more and more ranches and more children. And so he was Grandpa was always been a very big promoter, and he never stood back. He always was ready to forge ahead.
Yeah, my dad bought the Vermilion Ranch from Art Boswell in the early 60s. At that time, he ran some dairy cows on that ranch, and before we bought it, with some Hereford cows, and wasn't a big ranch by any means, but ended up going up to Jordan, Montana then in the late 60s, and bought 200 head of mama cows from the Ross Ranch and Livestock up there out of Jordan. It was a long time Angus outfit in Montana at that time. He got bull calves all off of them, brought them home. He had his first bull sale the following spring, and the bull calves more than paid for the cows, and the rest basically has been history. I mean, he's been a true believer in the Angus breed of cattle, has owned some of the great bulls of the breed, has bred some of the great bulls of the breed.
Bulls that served us real well. One was Baldrige Oscar, the other one was Leachman Right Time. I bought them at auction at those folks' sales, and Oscar and Right Time still were good stalwarts, very important to the start of a herd of registered Angus cattle. And other breeders around said, "My goodness, you'll never make that bull work. That's way too high price to pay for a bull." I said, "Well, we'll see about that." We collected semen on him and froze his semen and sold semen, and we sold about almost $6 million worth of semen over his life to other breeders, other cattlemen across America. So he was where did we come up with a purchase of, well, it was actually the public stockyards. It was the Public Livestock Market Center was the official name. We called it Pay's Public Auction Yards when we purchased it, and we put it because, again, we were at that time of the era, competition was slight. We didn't have much left in the country. The market was tough. A drought was again on, and so ranchers were to have trouble kind of getting things done and getting their purchases done in the way of doing business. Is what about my column as I see it in Western Livestock Reporter, and what was my intent and what was my goal with this column? The goal was to keep ranchers and cattlemen across the country informed about what's going on at the national level, the international level, and certainly in the cattle business in America, and how it has, how weather and competition are formed. And our paper, the Reporter, turned out it is of the livestock weeklies in the United States, in Western United States, probably the best read publication in the competition for readership and advertising dollars.
Auctioneering is perhaps the greatest enjoyment Grandpa took part in. He really enjoyed the challenge and the spirit of competition that is involved in auctioneering. In the 40 years he auctioneered, he sold some of the greatest purebred cattle sales and thoroughbred horse sales on this continent. He's one of the very few in the auctioneering profession that had the God-given ability to not only have a great chant, but more importantly could read people and convince an entire crowd that there is more value in what he was selling that particular day. He will no question be remembered as one of the greatest auctioneers ever.
Stud horses here we're going to sell to you. One is John and one is Joe. They aren't too well broke. They're green broke. They're 4-year-olds, coming 5s. What do I bid on them? So much a piece and you take 2 of them. You want to give me about $500 a piece for them? A little high. All right, give me $50. I bid it now 75. At 75 at about 100. And now 125. You're 110, thank you. And now 20. 110 now, bid now, 130 bid now, 110 and now 20 bid now, 30, 130, 40 bid now, 100 half at about 60, 160, 70, yes, 70 bid now, 80, 170 bid now, 80 bid now, 100 bid now, 225 at bid, yes, 25 and now 50, 25 at bid now, 50, better than you thought, huh? 225 at bid now, 50, now 275 at about 75, John and Joe for sale, 75 at about 300, I want 3, give me 85, yes, 85 at about 300, I sold them, $285 a piece, John and Joe, so much a piece, you bought them both.
Very businesslike, but always put family first. I mean, he could have a real bad day, come home, and we'd go shoot baskets, or we'd go throw the baseball, or hit the baseball, or I mean, I always said if he wasn't an auctioneer and a businessman and a rancher like he was, I really think he would have been a head coach for something. He just had great passion for sports and competition. I think it probably was more competition than anything. He just he likes to make deals. He likes to compete, and he installed that in his whole everyday life around the family as well. But he, I mean, I could count on. I mean, he was super busy, traveled a lot, but could count probably on one hand the number of ball games he missed. We always went to church as a family on Sunday mornings, and always had Sunday dinner that night growing up, which
when Irish eyes are smiling, sure 'tis like a morning spring, in the lilt of Irish laughter you can hear the angels sing. That was the kind of lullaby we got as a child. He didn't tell us how to live. He lives, and he lets us watch him. Now, I know my siblings will recognize that whistle, because every morning that my father was home, that was the serenade we got to get up. He'd whistle, and then he'd say, "It's time to get up. It's a beautiful day out. The birds are singing. The sun is shining." And that was even if it was snowing and 10 below. Michael Jordan said, "My heroes are and always will be my parents. I can't see having anyone else as my heroes." And I think my siblings and the grandkids would all agree. And of course, Tom Cook took this part of it, so yeah, Mom's the better half. There's always someone very special behind a special man, and she's it. In fact, Dad put a sign outside the house there on the fence. It reads, "Forget the dog, beware of my wife."
Just touching on some of the highlights, which anyone would be a lifetime for many, but the significance would be what is passed on, the lessons from my lifetime living the American dream.
But we learned a lot about work, and we learned a lot about devotion to a farm and to our work. It stayed with us pretty much all of our lives. The ability to learn how to work and do a little bit more in a day's work than maybe you were expected to do is pretty important in life. I learned a long time ago that we all learn a lot more from hard times than we ever learn from good times. We can all handle a win, we can all handle good times pretty good, but it takes some constitution to be able to handle hard times and hard things. We also needed to create more competition and interaction within the livestock auction market. And how do you do that? Well, a farmer or rancher, usually when they would be buying cattle, would have made a visit to their banker and got in mind about how much credit line they might have, how much money they could spend on these cattle, and they would usually have in mind, on especially feeder cattle, calves and yearlings, the banker would want to keep them in bounds. There's someplace between such and such and such is what they could bid. Well, the farmer feeder and maid ranchers they weren't total what you call professional buyers, and they weren't able to see the weight of those cattle in the ring as well. They could see quality, but if they just started bidding on them without knowing what they weighed, sometimes they would pay quite a little bit more per head for them when it was done than they maybe had wanted to. So by putting, I created the idea of a ring scale. In other words, we had the first in America, first ring scale in an auction market. By that's where the ring where the cattle come in, stand on that scale, and that with the reader board, the weight of that animal is flashed up there, both the average weight if it's a group of cattle, and if it's just one, it's just that weight of that one, and that's it worked. And now there's probably hardly any auction markets in all of America that does not have a ring scale now, and they all found out it was better business for them, better business for the consignor, and certainly better business for the buyer.
Yeah, my dad had the first video livestock auction in the world. Developed the idea of it where you go out to the farm or the ranch and film the cattle, and you get to pick your delivery date as a rancher. You get to express you sell the cattle under your terms and conditions as far as your weigh up, and just an outstanding, fantastic way to sell feeder cattle. And he came up with it way back in the 70s when, to be real honest, it wasn't very fashionable. A lot of people thought he was crazy. He was years ago, but I remember a guy coming up to me, an old guy, and says, we went to the very first video sale your dad sold, and I was sitting in North Platte, Nebraska at one of the satellite sites, and he said, I thought this guy's crazy, but when you look back, he's a guy that always has thought out front. He's always had vision, always had kind of knew what might work in years to come, and he was just 20 years ahead of his time at that time. But
Brother Jack was a pretty good trader. He used to he'd trade around with pigeons and in the lambs and all kinds of things. And he had a bike, an old bike. It didn't have any fenders. It didn't have all the accessories on it. But I loved to push that bike. I was just a kid. I was about a 7, 8-year-old kid, and I loved to push that bike. Well, he would let me push it for 10 minutes for every sack of alfalfa tips that I could find and put in the tips that he could feed his rabbits. He had rabbits. He was trading them around, and anyway, I got them all. Finally, after a long time, I used to go to Shupek. Was a sheep man that was next to us. He had a bunch of sheep, and I'd come home from school there in January, February, March, in that area, and I'll get off the bus, and I'd go down to the lambing sheds where they were lambing and help them guys in the lambing sheds get and when it's not all done with it, why Mr. Shupek would give me some of those bum lambs, they called them. They didn't have no mother for them, no needles, so you either do it that way or let them die. So anyway, I had a pretty little bunch of them, and I'd feed them things. Well, we got up the line, and Jack he'd make trades with me if I'd pick up, to get some of them alfalfa tips and all, he got to where he'd let me push that bike for maybe 20 to 30 minutes. Well, I learned from that kind of a trade. You better think it through. Well, got all done with it. I had 13 of them nice lambs. They were getting fat, doing real well, and he traded. He said, I'll just trade you the bike for your lambs. Well, I love that bike, but I didn't. Well, so I took it. I went on. Mom, my mother gave me the Fritz for it. Said, "Up Pat, now you could, even as tough as times were, we could have figured out a way to get those lambs down to Billings, and we could have sold them, and you could have bought a brand new bike for what they." But anyway, she gave me quite a scolding, and she asked Jack, "You're taking advantage of this brother of yours?" And he said, "Well, he wanted to trade. He wanted to do it, It's up to him to learn. And it was up to me to learn. And I thought them things through from then on. And since then, in the last 75 years, I have done a lot of trading, a lot of things, and I think things through pretty good, or try to. So it's.
When asked once about his past, growing up during the Depression, his comment in one of my lessons learned, "I don't worry about the past, except to learn from it. I love today, but I'm most excited about tomorrow."
Number one, and of course it's been mentioned, but faith. It's the most important facet of his personality. Number two is family. It is his proudest accomplishment, and he takes great pride in what he calls our tribe. Agriculture. Right up there with family. It's part of his family, it's part of his life. It's integrated into him. And his loyalty to it is second to none. Would be his patriotism. If there's any man in the world that has a theme song, besides Danny Boy, it's my father, and it's God Bless America. And I think he would agree with this quote. What is the essence of America? Finding and maintaining that perfect, delicate balance between freedom to and freedom from.
Yeah, I think one of the funnest things we did as our entire family did was probably go to Louisville, Kentucky here a couple of years ago when he got the Saddle and Sirloin Award for the beef industry, which is always awarded at the International, North American International there in Louisville, Kentucky. It would be, I mean, for people that don't know what the word means, it'd be like winning the Heisman Trophy in football or
Truly blessed in this industry of livestock to have this kind of a great honor. To the people here with the Saddle and Sirloin, all of you, and you many hundreds of people across America who have sent letters and emails, it's a great honor, but I'm humbled and gracious that at least I was chosen this year of 11. And thank you all of you very, very much. If you want, I call it God Bless America. God bless America.
Stand beside her and guide her through the light with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairie, to the ocean, wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, our home, sweet home.
Patrick King Goggins is known for many things from many people. From his ability to fire a crowd up, or to the businessman from Shepherd, Montana, he is known from people across the world. But to me, Pat Goggins is known as the greatest grandpa in the world, my hero.